My name is Maria Johnson, and we are now starting with our Living with LHON panels. And up here, I have three gentlemen who are all affected by LHON, and they are going to tell their story about their life diagnosed and living with LHON. And our first guest is John Knox. He is from Farmington, Connecticut, and he was affected at the young age of 16, and that's been a couple of years. Just a few, right?
Right.
And anyway, I'm going to turn the mic over to him, and he's going to tell us his LHON story.
Thank you. And first I want to say thanks to Alyssa in particular. I know it takes a lot of people to put together a room like this, but this is the first time I've come to the conference. I'm here with my family, my wife Mary, my son and daughter Molly and Robert as well. So really enjoying it, really enjoyed the evening last night. I was interested to hear all the different countries that are in the room, a good representation from Canada, where I'm originally from. I think I heard Germany, we have Ritchie from Australia. I think I heard Switzerland, Spain, Brazil as well, absolutely. So, and a little Brazilian music at the break, I think, as well. So, very international flavor to it. So in the minutes I have from Maria to talk to you today, I will tell you a little bit about my path, which is kind of a long one, might actually be the longest one in the room, not really sure, but I was first affected with LHON, and I didn't know what it was when I was 16 years old. That was in 1972, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a second, how old is this dude? I'm going to help you with the math. Take 2017 minus 1972, add 16, double it up, triple it up, add 3. I'm 61 years old, so I've had eyesight issues for about 45 years. What I'd like to do in my talk, there are a lot of people here, I think young and old, who are recently affected, and that includes James and Ritchie here on the panel, and Maria as well just a few years ago. So hopefully I can give some positive comments to people, especially the younger people who are newly affected. So you might want to write this down. I'm not going to tell you what it is till the end of my few minutes here, but the word is I-MIST, I-M-I-S-T. Don't start Googling it. You're not going to find it. It's not an Apple product. It's not an iPhone, an iPad. It's nothing like that. And I'll tell you what it is at the end. Part of it is I want you to pay attention while I'm talking, and if I get boring, you'll still hang on to hear what I-MIST stands for at the end. So back in 1972, my sister, who was registered to come to this conference, but she had a death in the family, but she and I had just gotten, I was 16 years old, gotten learner's permits. And our parents had a cool convertible, so we would go out driving together with learning permits, which of course is not exactly legal. But we decided if the cops ever pulled us over, we would just, with a straight face, say that we thought 2 learner's permits added up to a regular license. We never got pulled over. But about 2 months after I got that driver's license, I had a new job at a local new Olympic swimming pool that had opened up. I got a great job there after school and weekends, and over the course of Labor Day weekend, I lost my vision. I was reading a book on Friday night when I started the job for the first time, and by Sunday I couldn't read the book. So mentioned it to my parents, went to our ophthalmologist. I had worn glasses as a child, so already had an ophthalmologist. Dr. Newman mentioned a bunch of the kinds of tests. Many of you, it's a familiar story: lumbar punctures, spinal tap, fluorescein angiograms with that dye they put in your arm, all kinds of things. And eventually I had treatments, including different medications, prednisone, cortisone, shots in the eyes. I wasn't going to mention that, but Dr. Newman already opened that door. Non-steroidal medications in forms of eye drops, that sort of thing. So all kinds of treatments. Was seen by numerous doctors, including a doctor named Dr. Wise in Montefiore Hospital in Yonkers, New York. And the conclusion was from a group of maybe 5 different doctors, we think you have this thing called Leber's. They called it Leber's back then. They didn't call it LHON, Leber's disease. And I thought, a disease? I have a disease. That didn't ring well. There were 2 things from my high school time that really stand out for me. One was we kind of had a family meeting. I have 2 sisters, my mom and dad. And my mother, I really credit her in many ways. she said, okay, we're not going to call this a disease. We're not going to call it an impairment. We're not going to call it a disability. We're going to call it a condition, a neutral word. A condition was what she came up with. And that was a good and bad thing, because I did have some vision. I had mobility. I continued with high school. Back then, there wasn't much in the way of technology. It consisted of a magnifying glass and some tape recorders. My parents, my sisters, read into tape recorders, read to me each evening my homework. And the other thing that stands out for me, and this is important especially for the younger people, the other thing that stands out in my high school experience was you learn that some people may not be, who you thought may not be so willing to help you, but more importantly, there are people out there you don't even know who will come to the forefront to assist you with all kinds of things. So that was a great experience. And when I got towards the end of high school, my dad said to me, "What are you thinking about for university?" And at that point, I really hadn't, I thought, how am I going to do that? I'm getting out of high school, I had some pretty good marks, a lot of people helping me, but how on earth am I going to go to university? But he planted that seed, and I did go to university. I had, continuing with readers, I had one lady who I have no idea how she called me one day. She was a nun at a local convent. She said, "I will read for you." She said, "I have a master's degree, and I'd love to read the material." So I graduated in business administration a few years later. But in my third year there, my father said to me, "What are you thinking about for graduate school?" And I had not thought about graduate school at all. But again, that seed you see the theme here, and the seed was planted. So I applied to law school for a few different places. I was interviewed at a number of different law schools because I think they didn't know how they would deal with someone. I wasn't the first one to do that, but maybe one of the early ones. But I pictured this mountain of books, maybe 4 feet high, that I would have to get through during the course of 3 years of law school. A new service had started up in another university. It was a volunteer service. I basically bought 2 sets of books throughout law school, and the reading service basically read everything into a tape recorder. The best thing about law school was that's where I met my wife, Mary. We graduated, and in the same year, we were married a year or 2 later, and then, as I mentioned, my 2 children are here as well. Mary continued in the practice of law. I did become a member of the bar in Ontario, but very rapidly figured out it really wasn't going to be for me. It would be a very difficult lifestyle during the day. So I thought, okay, I have an undergraduate business degree, I have a law degree, how can I combine these things? I ended up in the investment profession, which has worked out well. But remember, go back to 1972, I still don't know that I actually have Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. Along comes 1993, I have 2 little children, we're living in Mississauga, just outside Toronto, and I get a call from one of the genetics clinics at the Hospital for Sick Children, and they said, "There's a test now. It's done at the Emory Clinic in Atlanta, and we can actually determine if this thing we think you've had all these years is actually what you have." So a blood sample was sent away, and in 1993 it came back with the 14484 diagnosis, which was interesting. Nothing to be done, of course, but at least some knowledge and starting to maybe understand the disease a little bit more. I had never met anybody with LHON other than 2 cousins I have, one with onset at age 40, a male cousin, and one at onset at age 50, like Maria, a female cousin. But until figuring out LHON.org a couple of years ago and coming to this event, participating in the calls, I never met anybody with it. So this has been a whole new chapter for me. But moving on from the diagnosis in 1993, again, not much to be done. The diagnosis was done again by the Emory Clinic. Ironically, we moved to Atlanta a couple of years later, and we lived there for about 15 years. We moved to Connecticut about 7 years ago. So that was my path. I think what I'd like to encourage, especially the younger people, but the older people in the group here who have recent onset, there are possibilities. And I think Billy in the last presentation used the word doing things a different way. There's always a way to get something done. it's going to be different for you than maybe the way you did it before. And realistically, obviously, if you wanted to be an astronaut, that may not happen for you, but you really should think that you can accomplish most of the things that you thought you could before you had onset of LHON. So I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts as you learn to live with your situation. It's very important for you to be flexible. That's true for most people, but particularly in a situation where you really can't see a whole lot, it's important to be flexible because things that you think you're going to encounter may be quite different for you, and you need to be able to roll with the punches, let's put it that way. So if you're a person who likes everything to be orderly, you may want to try to modify that thinking, because you're gonna get a lot of surprises in life. There are lots of people out there who are willing to help you. So two things about that: you need to ask. Don't be bashful about it. That theme, I think, has come out a couple of times today. People will be willing to help, and you can create little teams of people that help you in school, in work, in your home, in your family, all kinds of things like that. Create little teams, and you can help them, and they can help you. Let's come back to that word, I missed. What the heck is that? Hopefully everyone's still awake. If you take IMIST and put it in the middle of the word optic, as in Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy, you get the word optimistic. That's a key word for you to remember. Try to be optimistic. It's difficult at times. The last thing I want to tell you, when you're asking for help and as you go through school, work, life, facial recognition is a problem for all of us. We want to be friendly. It's hard for us to recognize people. It's hard for us to make that eye contact with people. What I've come to the conclusion is walk around with a smile on your face. You'll be a lot more approachable, and when you ask for help, people are going to be much more willing to respond to you. So that's the key thing, I think, is go through life smiling, and it'll help you a lot as you ask people to help you. So I'm going to ask James to continue and pass the microphone.
Okay. John, thank you so much. And one of the things you said is, this is a team effort now, and Lissa has taught me that it is a team effort. Two of my little team members are over there somewhere, my kids. Yes. Kudos to them. And it does become a team effort. I've got teams everywhere, and it took a while to get those teams together, but they do come together, right? So next up, we have James Kwinecki. He is from Niagara Falls, Canada. And he has, Canada in the house. Yeah, and he was affected about a year ago, and he is now 22. So I'm going to take it over to James.
So it was about last year on May 2-4 weekend when I realized my life was getting blurry, and I had no idea what was going on. I was the first person in my family to be affected. So I got back, and then I just went to a just a regular ophthalmologist at Costco, and then right away he referred me to go to the ER, and then they sent me to a specialist, and then it only took about 2 months to get full diagnosis of everything. It was very, very tough to accept. The first 4 or 5 months, I was in full denial, and I would just pretend everything was fine, because my eyes were still working pretty well. Only one eye was affected, and then it was November, December. Everything got so much worse, and then everything was just such a struggle, especially in Canada with all the snow. I'd be guessing every movement I would do. I would just hide hide in my house and try not to do that much, but I would just keep pushing through and try to stay busy with my friends. Most of my friends would make me get out of the house and go out and have so much fun. And then I got hooked on going to the gym every single day. Before I was affected, I would still go to the gym, but I was only doing it for looks, and then now it wasn't for looks anymore. So kind of turned it into more of a healthy thing, and eating right, and like optimizing my like mitochondria, because obviously that'll like play into like how bad your vision gets, I guess. I had to step away from like work when everything happened too. I took a sick leave just to kind of relax and just like figure life out, and then I was able to receive money, and then now like the money stopped, so I'm like ready to go back like as of recently. But it's been really tough because I was just working at a like an assembly plant, building cars for Ford, and then so they don't really know what to do with me, so we're just figuring that out. And right now I'm like I've been open up to like more different like other like interests, like doing like different cardio. When I go to the gym, I'll like ride the bike now, or like I'll do like Stairmaster and like stuff like that, just to try new things. And then I've been reading different books which I never read before at all, so it's like something new to do. Like I've been like reading like one book a week now. And like in 1 year, I'll read 52 books after like a whole year. So hopefully that like keeps on going. But yeah, I've been just like trying to stay positive, and like staying busy is like the main like thing. That's like the best like advice I'm able to give. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it for me.
Well, thank you. Thank you, James, and I agree. Staying busy. A busy blind girl is a happy blind girl. Busy blind boy is a happy blind boy, you know? So that's my motto. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. You did great. Passing it down to Ritchie, and Ritchie comes all the way from Australia, and he has been affected for a little over a year. He was affected at the age of 42, and I will turn it over to him to let him tell his LHON story.
Thanks, Maria. Good morning, everybody. James already said a lot of things I was going to say, but I'll try and approach it in a different way. So yeah, I was, at the time when I became affected, I was working in a very demanding job, lots of high stress, lots of long hours, working approximately around 14-hour day average, sometimes up to 16 or 17-hour days, and then going home, having 2 hours sleep, coming back, sometimes without a break. So I'll be working without a break, without meals. So my body was really run down, really overloaded, and I really believe that that's possibly what was my trigger, that my body just gave up. And so I was proceeding on those lines. Around November 2015, I started noticing just on the computer screen, nowhere else, just my focus point wasn't working so much on the computer screen. Because I was working so much, I thought, well, it's just repetitive strain injury. I'm working too much, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. It'll all be fine over the Christmas break when I have a bit of a break, and I'll spring back. I went and saw an optometrist, and he said exactly that. He said, look, I can't see anything wrong, I'm sure it'll be fine. Got a little bit worse, but it was only quite gradual as compared to what John said. Mine was quite gradual at the start, and then went to my GP 2 days before Christmas, and she got quite worked up and said, look, something's really wrong. Couldn't get into an ophthalmologist over the Christmas break, and then didn't get to see her until the 21st of January. She started doing some tests, but fortunately I didn't go through what a lot of people here have talked about, the 6 months or a year of lots of tests. So it was really only just a few weeks. And then just while I was doing those, before we found anything conclusively, I went overseas for a holiday for about 12 days in early February. And during those 12 days, my eyesight just tanked completely. My second eye started while I was overseas. And when I came back, there was no way I felt safe to drive anymore. It was simply where before I was driving up to the day I left. It was pretty sudden that time. The day after I got back, my ophthalmologist was happy to call it as LHON because just on the symptoms, because they had progressed so far. That wasn't so much of a surprise to me because my sister had become affected 10 years before that, and that was the first time in our family. But so I was familiar with what Lieber's was, having been one of her carers, and so it was something that I was familiar with. Of course, not good news, but still wasn't so much of a surprise. The good news along those lines is that my sister actually has been lucky enough to have a remarkable recovery over the years. After 5 years, she was back driving, and she's working as a teacher. She can read anything. It's quite incredible what her response has been to that. Of course, I'm hoping that it might be in the genes as well, and that that's a recovery like that might come to me. But I'm very realistic about what those chances are. But I have started to model a bit of what she did, and that was to really live a very clean diet, when possible, organic foods, staying away from toxins, even bottled water as much as possible, staying away from coffee, that type of thing. So that's generally what I do, and now as much as I can, and really have spent one way of handling my stress is to actually really think about my health, look at foods, what foods can help my health, what foods won't, and then the importance of looking after your body and looking after everything in your body. And so I took a year off work, a bit like James did, and fortunately was supported by work for that, and then really spent that year just really focusing on my health. I've seen a lot of allied health practitioners, people like acupuncturists, kinesiologists, people like that, to really get my body up and ready and back to where it should be. So really that's been one of the key ways. I'm going to mention a few ways that I've really sort of handled the shock of the last year, and firstly was really sort of educating myself about LHON, reading up as much as I can about it. Maybe it's the way my mind works, but I really thought I need to know what this thing is. And it is a really confusing, difficult thing to get your head around. You know, you've got this optic nerve problem, but it's also something to do with mitochondria. Well, I didn't know what mitochondria was before I was diagnosed. And so I've done a lot of reading about that and seeing as many doctors as I can. I've seen probably over 20 doctors in the last year and a half. Also, so much so that when I went to Europe last year in November, I made a side trip to Italy to see Dr. Valerio Corelli, and wanted to tap into his expertise. And on Tuesday, on the way here, I saw Alfredo Sedern. Really keen just to get as much information as I can and as much advice as I can, and I found that really useful. Secondly, I've of course, used humour about the silly things that I've done in the last year and a half since going blind. I mean, if I had more time, I'd tell you some stories. I can tell them afterwards, but I'm sure we all have them. There are some crazy, stupid things you do when you're losing your sight. Confusing people from other people, confusing things for other people. I mean, even just a moment ago, just make a cup of tea, I almost put the mug on into the bin, thinking that was actually like a bit of a table, but there was a white bin, and I almost did that then. These things actually are worth having a good laugh about. I tell the stories to my friends and family, have a great laugh about them. That works for me because they are funny. I mean, they're sad, they're depressing, they're embarrassing, but they are very funny. I guess the third thing I'd mention is I've really had to, of course, going through something like this is really bad for your confidence. It does give you a bit of a kick in the guts, but what I've needed to do is actually remind myself that it's worth backing myself, that I've achieved a lot in my life, and that I can be strong. I know that I can be strong. I've faced other challenges before. I can do this as well. And backing yourself is actually been really useful for me. The last thing I'd like to say before I finish is also talking about working with doctors, getting bits of information from different doctors. Well, one thing I've struggled with in Australia is we've got a smaller population than you do here in the US, and so LHON is not something the doctors see very often. We also don't have many experts as such, many practitioners I can go to who really know LHON. So I ask a lot of questions, and often you get answers back where you feel as though, you don't really know the answer to that, you're just pretending you do. And I've actually been quite blunt with some doctors and say, look, I'd prefer you to say I don't know the answer to that than actually try and pretend you do. And that made me really quite angry in it, but also I've learned to actually really be careful about the advice you get, and particularly when in the exception of going and seeing like someone like Dr. Newman, and of course they know what they're talking about, but I'm talking about the generic ophthalmologists and people like that. For example, I want to give one example. My first, the ophthalmologist who diagnosed me, at the time she diagnosed me, she said, you need to go out pretty quickly and get yourself some vitamin B12 tablets and some folate tablets. I did. She didn't give me any indication as to what I should look for and what I shouldn't. And so for the next 6 weeks, I was taking what was on the label as a very high dose of B12. Then about 6 weeks later, I was with a friend. He was reading the Wikipedia entry for LHON, so it was still part of this learning process about what LHON is. And then on that Wikipedia entry, there was one line that said, people with LHON need to be careful about taking particular forms of B12 because it may by itself, not because of LHON, may itself send you blind. Not good news to hear. I started panicking and went and looked at my tablets. Of course, they were that particular preparation, which is called cyanide cobalamin. One thing to look out for if you're taking vitamin B12, because another doctor actually gave me a sample pack of some vitamins and they were good for eyes, and that the B12 on that was cyanide cobalamin. You have to be careful about those types of things, and that sent me into a frenzy for the next couple of days. I was really upset that this doctor was there, but the doctor obviously didn't know that this was an issue, and obviously didn't tell me. And so I learned from that you need to be careful about what advice you get from some of these doctors, and really sort of do some research. Of course, one thing I should say is I didn't just trust Wikipedia. We did some other searches elsewhere on the internet, and found that actually, I think it was MIT, one of the sites there actually mentioned, and also drug companies that sold B12 had on their patient information, if you got Liebers, don't take this. So, yeah, be careful with there's some advice you get from doctors, I think. Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Ritchie. Yeah, that's good advice. Really good advice. Thank you so much. Now, I'm going to open it up just for a few minutes for any questions you might have for these fine young gentlemen. If anyone has any questions,
I like the young bit. Thanks. Yeah.
Well, we can't see your hands up, so you're gonna have to just help us out on this one. So, just ask. There's probably one of my kids with a microphone.
I have
Both.
one.
Okay.
I appreciate, John, you talking because my husband has been affected for 35 years, so he's in your boat, and he also went to law school, and so there's a lot of commonalities. But as far as James and Ritchie, I don't know what mutation you have, and if you found any improvement or stabilization due to your health changes or diet.
I have 34/60, and my vision it's been the same since like December. I would say so. Maybe my light sensitivity has like kind of adjusted, but maybe that's like just because it's summer now and like it's more sunny out.
Yeah, that's one thing I didn't mention. I meant to. My sister and I are both negative on the three main mutations. And when I went and saw Dr. Corelli in Bologna, he ran a test for me and found out my mutation is one of the rare ones, 4171. If anyone's out there with 4171, please come and talk to me because I haven't met anyone yet. But I haven't noticed any recovery. In fact, actually, that's another thing I was going to mention was I really consider it starting in February when I went on that holiday. I stabilised around late September, so a bit longer than the standard 6 months, and then again in January I went through a period of 6 weeks where I went down again, and then about a month ago I noticed another drop. That was only a bit of one drop down. It came out of nowhere, so I don't really feel as though I've really stabilised yet. My sister noticed first sort of signs after about a year, but I think if it's going to happen, then it'll probably be a couple of years for me. But I'm realistic about whether that's going to happen or not as well. But I think optimism, I think the power of the mind, this type of thing is very important. I think being optimistic about it, even if the chances are low, and thinking about that mind-body connection is actually really important.
Yeah, great. Anyone else? No?
Yes, can you tell me what the advantage is to always be in touch with an eye doctor and what eye doctor you should be in touch with all the time?
I'm not sure if that's the question for us. We, of course, have talked in the groups that, we should always still keep in touch with your ophthalmologist and your neuro-ophthalmologist because you can have other eye conditions occur later. You can have labors, now I'm getting confused on how to say it, LHON, and you can also still get macular degeneration. You can have glaucoma, and of course you don't want to start piling one on top of the other, as it's going to make the vision all that much worse. So I've heard various, yes. Is she going to add on? Thank you.
So that what you said was the absolute primary reason, because you want to maintain what you have absolutely to the best. But the second reason may be obviated by us having a phenomenal medical-based registry at some point. But until we have that, I think it behooves all of you to at least have some contact once every year, once every 2 years, perhaps with someone who can check and see what's out there, what's coming around the pike, whether there's anything new treatment-wise, and also because you will have family members who may become involved, unfortunately, and you want to know exactly what's available for them. But you're right the way you asked it. There's really not much we can do for you other than some education, some keeping you up to date, which I think Lissa and her website does better than I can. And of course, watching you, and a good general ophthalmologist should be able to watch you for any of these other diseases. I would strongly, I don't know if there are optometrists in the room, and I'm sorry, but I would strongly suggest that if you do have your yearly eye care, it's at least an ophthalmologist, because you want someone who has a real, at least, understanding of the disorder.
Can I add to that, Maria, please?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'd like to add, I totally agree with Dr. Newman there about optometrists. The optometrist I saw the first time, I said to him, look, my sister's got Leber's, could be, and he actually said, no, it's not Leber's. I think I understand actually the machines. He had no chance of actually seeing inside my optic nerve, so really he probably didn't even understand what that was. I also would suggest when finally, if you can't get yourself to a Dr. Sadoun or Nancy Newman, then really looking for a doctor who's actually interested in this and actually will follow up academically, maybe do some more reading and educating him or herself about that, because that's someone you want who actually is going to pay more attention to Leber's and consider Leber's actually as a mitochondrial disease as much as an optic issue, and not just seeing it as an optic issue. Mm-hmm. The other ones I've found that much better.
Great. Probably maybe have time for one more question, if there is one. Okay.
So my son lives in Nashville. He's about 150 miles away from me. I'm almost certain he has Leber's. His grandmother did. Are there any resources, and maybe this is for you too, Lissa, like a Leber's Audio 101 for somebody just to listen to for 10 minutes about what he should understand, or Leber's Audio 101 for parents?
You can check out Maria's podcast.
Are those things there on
Take
your
it away,
podcast?
James.
Good plug. Oh.
Yeah, well,
Thanks.
I didn't even pay him. Really. No. There are some things we'll be talking later today of some resources that, besides medical journals and scientific updates and those kind of things, that there will be links that you can find and pass along to your son that we'll be talking about later today. And I also will be giving out a link that you can find a video library of past videos from past conferences. Like today's being videotaped, and then Lissa meticulously edits the videos per topic, and those I'll give a link of where those can be found, and also past LHON live phone call archives as well. And so a ton of those resources will be giving out later today, so you're in luck. Okay.
I also found those previous video conferences from a couple of years ago. That's actually why I'm here, really, because it started there by finding one of those videos. My mother found it, actually, and it was called The Science of LHON. It's about 2 hours long from two years ago with three doctors up here, and that's actually a really great sort of catch-all, over 2 hours, a really good snapshot of LHON is, so I'd recommend that.
Yeah, we'll be giving you links to those libraries and all that good stuff, so right on. Okay. All right. Well, if you want to talk to any of these gentlemen later at lunch or at the break later, please feel free to find them because they're not going to find you. So please feel free, but give a great hand for these guys.